You ever wonder why the men who build worlds lose women? Why the ones who stay up until 3 a.m. building empires in silence come home to silence? Let's get honest. No romance, no comfort, just a cold, unfiltered truth. The greater the man, the lonelier the road. Not because he's broken, but because most people, especially the ones who claim to love him, can't handle his temperature. Greatness is a furnace. It burns through distraction, through softness, through the need to be liked. And when a man begins to burn for something bigger than love, something deeper than pleasure, he stops being lovable in the usual sense. Because greatness doesn't cuddle, it builds, it sacrifices, it disappears when others want it present. It chooses discipline over desire over and over again, and that makes him unsafe. Not because he's violent, but because he cannot be owned. That's why men like Napoleon weren't betrayed for their flaws. They were betrayed for their fire. Josephine didn't cheat on Napoleon because he wasn't worthy. She cheated because his power made her feel irrelevant. Because when a man becomes a force, real one, he stops orbiting others. He starts ascending. And most people, especially those craving emotional leverage, can't handle being left behind. So they lash out, not always with words, but with absence, with guilt, with subtle punishments for choosing purpose over presence. You know this already, you felt it, the emotional distance that grows the closer you get to your mission. The resentment that shows up the moment you stop checking in every hour, because you're too busy becoming someone no one recognizes anymore. You're not being cold, you're being called, but they don't see that. They see silence and call it neglect. They see obsession and call it narcissism. They see boundaries and call it rejection. And suddenly, your strength becomes your flaw. Not because it is, but because it doesn't serve their comfort. Let me ask you something. Have you ever dated someone who said they admired your ambition, but slowly tried to pull you back every time you moved forward? They didn't fall in love with your greatness. They fell in love with the idea of it. The version that was still manageable, still tame, still orbiting them. But the real you, the one who stops explaining, the one who works while others sleep, the one who vanishes into vision, that man terrifies them because he no longer needs approval. He doesn't pause to be understood. He doesn't ask permission to evolve. And that is what makes you dangerous. But here's the irony. The more you give up who you are to stay loved, the more invisible you become. And one day you'll wake up in a relationship surrounded by someone who loves you, but doesn't respect you, doesn't follow you, doesn't even see you, because you stopped being a flame and became a pillow. Don't do that. Why is it that when a man rises, not just financially, not just socially, but psychologically, when he begins to burn for truth, power, structure, discipline, he becomes less wanted? Because the truth is brutal. Most women don't want to be led. They want to be centered. They want to be the axis around which your whole world spins. And the moment you become your own axis, you're not useful anymore. You stop being a mirror of their value and start becoming a mirror of their insecurity. That's why so many women, consciously or not, reach for men they can mold, not necessarily weaker, but softer, less focused, easier to interrupt. They say things like, "You're so intense. Why can't you just be more present? Why does everything have to be about work?" But what they're really saying is, "Why aren't you orbiting me?" Because here's the reality no one wants to admit. The average woman doesn't admire you for what you are. She admires you for what she can influence. And when she can't, when your silence isn't weakness but stillness, when your vision isn't a phase but a fire, when your love isn't obsession but sovereignty, she doesn't know what to do with you. You stop being predictable. You stop being compliant. You stop being available on demand. And that makes her feel powerless. Let me give it to you raw. A man with mission is threatening. Not because he's cruel, but because he cannot be seduced with convenience. He doesn't collapse under loneliness. He doesn't panic when she pulls away. He doesn't beg to be understood. He keeps moving. And movement, true masculine movement, is terrifying to anyone who secretly hoped to become your anchor. Because you don't drop anchor. You break orbit. This is why so many women settle upward in appearance, but downward in essence. They find men who look powerful, but on the inside are obedient. Soft clay, grateful, eager to please. They'll never lead, but they'll never leave either. And in a world full of fear, that kind of emotional predictability is currency. But let's be clear, she might marry that man. She might even love him, but she'll never admire him, because admiration, real admiration, is reserved for the men she cannot control, for the men who live by their own code, who aren't moved by her moods, who stay steady even when she storms. And if you're that man, prepare for loneliness, because most won't follow you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right in ways they're not ready to live with. You reflect what they gave up. You remind them what it costs to stand alone. You show them what it means to stop orbiting someone else and start burning for something real. And most people aren't ready for that, especially in love. So when you feel abandoned, not for being weak, but for being too much, understand this. She didn't want a king. She wanted someone to orbit her. You refused. And that refusal was your freedom. You think she left because you were too cold, too distant, too focused. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you were too alive, too honest, too disciplined, too consumed by something she couldn't control, and that terrified her. Not because she hated you, but because your presence exposed her stillness. Your vision made her question her comfort. Your intensity demanded that she rise, and she didn't want to. Not really. She said she loved your drive, until it took you away from her. She said she admired your strength, until it didn't bend when she broke down. She said she believed in your purpose until it cost her a little attention. But you kept going. Because you weren't in this to be adored. You were in this to become something real. That kind of man. The one who keeps building while being unloved, keeps leading while being doubted, keeps rising while being left. He doesn't do it for applause. He does it because there is no other way. But here's what hurts most. She didn't walk away from your darkness. She walked away from your light. Because your light burned too clean, too precise, too unmoved by emotional chaos. It was a fire that demanded truth in return, and most people, most women, don't want truth. They want narrative, they want safety, they want emotion wrapped in compliance, and when they don't get it, they don't argue with your strength, they abandon it. But listen carefully. That's not your failure, it's your graduation, because now you understand what it costs to carry vision in a world that worships comfort. You understand why lions walk alone, why greatness always lives at the edge of abandonment, because you can't lead if you're afraid to be left. You can't build legacy if you keep pausing to explain your silence. You can't become the man you're meant to be if you keep negotiating with someone who's still measuring you against her wounds. So no, you weren't rejected for being broken. You were rejected for refusing to be small, for refusing to be tamed, for refusing to trade your discipline for the illusion of emotional harmony. And that's your fire. That's what makes you different. She didn't want that. She wanted a companion. You were a storm, so don't water yourself down for the next one. Don't dim your clarity so someone else can feel safe in their confusion. Don't fake softness just to be held for one more night, because you are not here to be held. You are here to hold the line. The line between your truth and their expectations. The line between who you are and who they wish you'd be. And every time you honor that line, you may lose someone, but you gain yourself, and that's a trade no man of purpose ever regrets. Let's strip away the illusion. She didn't choose him because he was better than you. She chose him because he was easier. Easier to predict, easier to soothe, easier to own. He smiles more. He talks softer. He stays close, even when there's nothing to respect. He doesn't burn the way you do, but that's the point. She didn't want fire, she wanted warmth. Not the kind that pushes her to grow, but the kind that curls around her insecurities and says, "You don't have to change." He'll orbit her world. He'll rewrite his dreams for her comfort. He'll apologize before he speaks. And for that, she'll call him a real man. But you and I both know he's not real. He's palatable. That's what so many people really want. Not truth, not power. Just a partner who doesn't disrupt their inner noise. You bring silence. That dangerous, confronting silence. The kind that makes them hear their own excuses. The kind that reflects back their complacency. You ask for nothing, but your presence demands everything. And that's why she couldn't stay. Because standing beside you required becoming more. And most people, even the ones who say they crave growth, will run from the cost of transformation. They'll say you're too much, too intense, too unavailable. But what they really mean is, you make me feel my smallness, and I hate that. So they choose softer men. Men who ask permission. Men who carry the emotional weight for them, not with them. And those men, they'll be loved. They'll be needed. They'll be invited into warm beds and safer stories. But they will never be followed. Because no one truly follows the man who kneels. And the truth? You were never meant to be loved like the rest. You are not a pet. You are not a playlist. You are not a remedy for someone's restlessness. You are a summons, a challenge to rise, a test of depth, a mirror that won't lie just to be kissed. And because of that, you will walk alone. Not always, not forever, but enough to feel the silence that comes when your path outgrows their comfort. Let them go. Let the illusion of compatibility die. Because love without alignment is just seduction, and seduction fades. You want devotion? Then stop diluting your presence just to be accepted. Because here's the brutal paradox. The man who bends to be chosen will never be respected once he is. But the man who refuses to kneel, he may be feared, he may be doubted, he may even be left, but deep down they will remember him. Not because he made them feel safe, but because he made them feel something real. And in a world addicted to comfort, that kind of man is unforgettable. There comes a moment, quiet, brutal, and irreversible, when a man realizes he will never be loved for his fire, only feared for it, misunderstood, tamed, or left, but never truly embraced. And in that moment, he faces the choice: betray his nature, or bury his need to be understood, because greatness is not about applause. It's not about being seen. It's about becoming so true to your path that even loneliness feels like alignment. Napoleon knew this. He didn't hate love. He just outgrew what passed for it. He saw the lie that if he just gave enough, softened enough, slowed down enough, he would be accepted. But the truth, the more he gave, the less they saw him, not because he wasn't enough, but because his power made them feel too little. And that is the curse of the rare man. He either shrinks to be loved or grows to be alone. You already know which one he chose, and now, so must you. Because here's the final truth no one says out loud. No woman builds statues. No woman writes history. No woman leads empires into the dark. Men do, and they do it alone. Bleeding, focused, misjudged, but unstoppable. You were not rejected for your flaws. You were rejected for your fire, because being with you required her to become more. And most don't want to become. They want to be held. They want to rest, not rise. To be praised, not pierced. And you are not praise. You are a mirror, a storm, a man who walks into chaos not to survive it, but to own it. So don't envy the ones who were chosen. Pity them, because though they may be loved, they will never be respected. They will be tolerated, needed, even cherished, but never followed, because nothing in them leads. And as for you, you were never meant to be loved like the rest. Your life is not a lullaby, it's a war drum. You were not built for emotional comfort, you were built for spiritual conquest. And yes, it will cost you. You may walk alone, you may die misunderstood, but if you endure, the world won't forget your name. Because power doesn't beg, it doesn't ask for affection, it doesn't negotiate with fear, it leaves a mark. So let them love the soft ones, let them praise the tame ones, but you were born to be remembered, not for how you loved, but for how you lived. So stop apologizing for your fire, stop kneeling to be kissed, stand. Write your name in history, not with flowers, but with blood. And when they ask why she didn't stay, smile, because you finally understand she didn't want greatness, she wanted comfort. And you, my brother, you are not comfort, you are danger, and the world still bows to danger.